Hey guys, and welcome back to the Haunted Huddle over coffee. My name's Lauren.
I'm Nex.
And I'm T.
Today we got a little bit of spooky stuff for you today. Today we're going to be talking about, what was we talking about, T? Because T, today is all you. Today you're leading everything.
All right. So, speaking of spooky stuff, if you're ever afraid of being alone in your own home and out and away from society, this is probably the one that you should listen to.
We're
We're talking about stuff like Skinwalker Ranch. And, we might dabble a little bit more into other similar stories to Skinwalker Ranch. But it won't all be about Skinwalker Ranch because there are other issues pertaining to Skinwalker Ranch. But I guess the biggest thing that kind of draws me to this subject is the fact that this happens with a lot of ranches out in the West. And it's very vast. It's not as compact as it is here on the East Coast, where we have cities like every couple miles or towns every couple miles. Out in the West, especially ranches, you are way out away from society. You do not have another person near you. In a lot of cases, you do not have access to a lot of stuff that everybody else would have access to. And when it comes down to ranches, there's a lot of spooky shit that happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with Skinwalker Ranch, what kind of drew me to that is the fact that there are UFO sightings, possible demon sightings. We'll dive more into that. It gets a little bit wild. But
is it an alien? Is it a demon? Who knows?
But it's not just Skinwalker Ranch. We also have aliens.
So are demons.
Yeah. Only if you smell sulfur. If you don't smell sulfur.
It honestly, at this point in time, depends on what side of this community you're on.
Question for those of us.
So, with Skinwalker Ranch, we know. No, you're fine.
What is
this is why the tracks are separated.
Yeah. What is a skinwalker for some people who might not
lore.
know?
I knew I should have written this definition down.
I know that it varies from origin what really a skinwalker is, but I think the most common definition is that they were people who practiced magic, who sold their soul or some kind of ritual happened so that they could shapeshift.
It comes from the Navajo, and specifically Navajo folklore. It is a witch or sorcerer who can transform into, possess, or disguise themselves as an animal, just as Nex had stated.
I'm a fucking genius. I retain the stupidest knowledge.
It's okay, because when it comes down to aliens and shit like this, I'm the same way.
But I don't always remember where it's from, so don't ever ask me to cite things. Sometimes I'm just gonna get it wrong. I can give you a definition.
That's a skinwalker. He's not that smart.
Okay,
nobody
but they
said
don't
they're
have
smart.
To be smart. Look, if you've ever seen a coyote, they're not the smartest animals. And usually skinwalkers are associated with trickster animals.
Look at this thing that I have next to me. This is a fucking skinwalker.
Look, he's just Moon, okay? He's Moon.
I think Moon's a skinwalker.
Those who can't see what it's pointing to, it's their husky.
Is my husky. I love him. He's so stupid, but you're so creepy sometimes.
They can generally take the form of any animal, but they're more associated with trickster animals like coyotes, wolves, foxes, or bears. I don't know how a bear could trick you. You'd see that thing like a mile away. Unless he's offering you honey or berries. Halson, is that
or
you?
A hug. Halson, is that you? Listen, would you rather encounter a bear or a man?
I will always want to encounter
a bear, a man, or a skinwalker. Here are your options.
I'd rather just encounter Halson altogether.
Bear. The bear. Always the bear.
All right.
Okay, Lauren, but now it's a bear, a man, or a skinwalker. You'll never know for the skinwalker.
This is true. Still say bear.
Anyways, so Skinwalker Ranch is actually not called Skinwalker Ranch. This is what everybody calls it because of all the sightings and weirdness that happens. And mind you, this is actually this ranch is wedged between two indigenous people's reservations.
Wasn't it built on a battleground or something? Or part of it was? So am I thinking of a different ranch? There's so many of these bitches.
There's so many, but this is why I will never buy a ranch. Or live on a ranch.
You never know what was there
I never
prior.
know. I don't know what white person decided to build on haunted land. or curse
Oh
land.
my-
I don't care.
Welcome to Long Island.
Okay,
Listen,
well,
remember, all of the United States is just stolen land straight up. So, like, yeah, no, we have no place to be saying, oh, like, well, look what all these people did to this land because they were here first.
And
I'm just
before
saying.
people get all uppity and be like, well, this is America, I don't care. Read the history books, please, and thank you. I don't
Remember
care
where
how
we came
prettified
from.
they worded it.
I'm trying to refrain from saying something about America that involves the mortality rate of a certain demographic.
I don't care. Then don't watch this. We're covering everything. Don't get your fifis hurt. It's not personal.
Skinwalker was originally called the Sherman Ranch because the Shermans were the original owners. They bought it, they lived in it, and for them, they weren't really sure what was going on. There was their new home, and of course, sounds like your stereotypical like this is the beginning of a horror movie. It's not like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of horror movie, but they had, there's stuff that happens at night around their home. They're like, oh my god, what is this? What's happening? Sometimes you'll see strange lights in the sky, and you could obviously tell the difference between a plane and something that's not supposed to be there, or even a moving satellite in the night sky. They each have different ways of like flying, and I'm not gonna say I have seen UFOs, and it's the trippiest thing. I know what a plane looks like at night. I know what the lights look like on a plane at night. And when you see it, you're like, that's not normal.
Yeah, but some people don't know what the fuck a satellite looks like in the night sky. I don't.
It
But
looks like
that's
a
because I
fast
live in
moving-
New York. You can't
But
see
you-
dick all.
I've had the privilege of living in
Mine too.
Alaska, so like
Well, not everybody has that, T.
but people in the desert also have a similar experience because when you're out in the desert, you see everything in the night sky. But they see flashing lights, mysterious objects, strange circles in their fields. And crop circles are kind of like one of those things like, oh yeah, it's just a hoax. Like, okay, some of them are hoaxes, and there are people that admitted to it being hoaxes, but then there are some that are like, how did these radiation, or scorch marks end up on the plant itself?
Definitely think there's a lot of like hoax crop circles.
Oh,
I
there
feel
are.
like
'Cause,
nowadays
yeah.
because people want the attention of it. But I definitely do think that like there's a lot of crop circles that aren't like fake.
Banish my son. He's not listening.
That's not something you hear today. It's banish my son. I should sit in my kitchen because right now that's the only place I'm actually getting decent Wi-Fi.
But with Skinwalker Ranch, there really isn't a whole lot of evidence aside from people saying, "This is what happened. This is something that is this happened to us," right? And sometimes you can't really trust those eyewitness reports because sometimes you just see crazy shit. I know sometimes I see crazy shit, like a figure at the foot of my bed, and I don't think that's normal to me now.
Yeah, but that could just be mocha.
I mean see. And that's the thing. It could be Mocha. There was one time I thought my own cat was a demon sitting at the foot of my bed, and I
It's
kicked him
okay.
off the bed.
I thought that about Kenai because my bed is so low, like you guys have seen. My bed is so fucking low. And he'll just sit there and be so close to my face. So if I roll over, it just get hot breath against my face. I've smacked him way too many times, and he hasn't gotten the hint to not do that yet.
That has been Toad's favorite thing to do lately. He'll just sit there and stare at me while I sleep, just sleep right on my chest.
I know. That wasn't even Toad.
Right up at the camera. I don't know which
Hi,
cat that
how
was.
are you?
That was perfectly.
Was that Zamboni?
That's Zamboni, just like Skinwalker? What?
Who? Me?
Out of all the cats, I honestly think Zamboni could be a
Is a
Skinwalker.
Skinwalker.
He loves like just two people in the entire house. Like he's obsessed with like my brother David, and he's obsessed with my dad, and that is it. But like this cat is way too smart for his own good. Like you'll sit there and talk to him, and he'll 100% understand every word that you're saying. Like you're like okay, and he'll go and do whatever you tell him to go do. He's definitely a Skinwalker.
So the other thing with ranches, right, is neighbors are very sparsed
Far.
apart. But when your neighbors are also seeing some of the same stuff that you're seeing in the sky, that is kind of like, okay, there's definitely something going on.
It maybe
But-
not that crazy.
Skinwalker Ranch is not the only ranch that's like that. There's actually quite a few that have their own stories and people, families seeing stuff that shouldn't be there, on top of their cows getting mutilated, dogs turning up dead as well, especially those that guard, the ranch property, stuff like that. So content warning, unfortunately,
Put one at the beginning of this. Let me put clip in. So
owners do end up losing some form of animal, and not in the way that you'd expect to lose an animal. So one of the ones that I took interest in, because Skinwalker Ranch is kind of weird and not really, there's not a lot behind it as much as the History Channel likes to make it, but another one is Stardust Ranch. And this one got me because after watching a couple videos on it and reading the story, we have John and Joyce Edmond, who moved into this ranch. This was their home. They were going to make it a home. They were trying to make a rescue for horses and dogs. They had a lot of Rottweilers that they were rescuing, which, bless them, love that.
Little bodies.
But it wasn't long after they moved in, the last tenants, there were some issues with the last tenants, and they thought, like, this is like red flag number one. When the new owners came in, the tenants' belongings were still in the home. So the Edmonds contacted their realtor, and they're like, "Hey, this wasn't part of the deal. Why is the last tenant's furniture in here?" Well, next day, all of the the previous tenants were like, "Oh, let me go collect that." Well, when they went to go collect it, all the stuff was in the pool.
Wait, what?
Yeah, and the tenants thought the new, like, John and Joyce, or the Edmonds, had put their belongings into the pool. And when the Edmonds are like, "We didn't do that."
Wait, hold on. The tenants came back that owned this property, that
Yep.
owned the stuff inside. They came back to get their shit.
Yep.
And found it in the pool.
Found it in the pool. They thought it was the Edmonds at first. That they thought, like, the Edmonds were just angry at them or something like that.
Okay, but, where did they go? Why'd you leave your crap and not say anything like, "Hey, I'll pick this up later"?
Because they were dealing with the same stuff that these folks were going to start dealing with. So, red flag number 2 that comes in, right? When, one guy, John's, like, unpacking his belongings in the kitchen and, doing stuff that you would when you move into a place, making it your own. He spots a veteran-looking man with either a machete or, like, some sort of sword walking up on the property. And he saw this guy come up through the kitchen window. And he's like, "Hi, what are you doing?" And apparently the last tenants, I'm pretty sure, details are a little fuzzy, but pretty sure the last tenants had hired this guy to kill monsters, like, around the property.
Wait, what?
The fuck are you killing?
That is what makes this so interesting, is they had their own, like, monster hunter.
Toss a coin to your wrist.
Their very own Witcher. Like, I don't know. How do you get a job like that? Like, do you just put in a listing? Like,
I guess so.
But, the one guy's like, John's obviously like, "What the hell? Okay, I don't think we'll need your services," because obviously you don't believe in some of the stuff that's going to be happening, right?
Yeah.
So he ends up, telling the guy, he's like, "Hey, we don't really need your services. Thank you, but, like, we don't, you're free to go. Like, we don't really need you here. We're just a family trying to make a rescue for ourselves." Mind you, this guy is also a therapist, and part of the thing for him opening this rescue is to help mentally disabled, or just kids who are struggling, with, like, horse, therapy with being around animals, essentially.
What is it? It's like equestrian therapy or something?
Something like that, or, with the dogs too. But him and his wife are going to do. Well, his wife actually worked for the FBI, which I think is kind of funny with all the stuff that was happening. Yeah.
I think it was staged now.
So they end up firing this guy and being like, "We don't really need you here. Thank you for your services," whatever the fuck those were, right? And things were fine. They didn't really think anything was happening, until, a few mornings he started seeing, like, panels that each weighed like 100 pounds, kind of, like, bent all weird. And then stuff was broken into, and he was finding, on top of the stereotypical, like there were some animal mutilations, unfortunately. So things get even weirder from there, where one of their dogs, one of their Rotties, had spotted something like in the dark or in the distance, right? And actually went after this thing. And, mind you, this guy does protect his property. He does have a way of, protecting himself like most ranchers do. But his dog had actually caught something. And this guy shot at it, and the blood, I guess, from what was described as like brake fluid, they weren't sure. And then, like, of course, there's no bodies. So, obviously that's going to add to like, well, if there's no bodies, like, how is this going to. But there was something that was like actually startling their dogs. And their dogs were doing their jobs, protecting it. They actually did lose one dog, unfortunately. But it gets weirder from there. Of course, like he's very protective over his ranch and stuff, as one would be. But then they start kind of like peering at his house, and I think it escalated to the point where he woke up and saw his wife levitating and 3 little figures like in the room. And so there was also a craft outside, and on top of there being like lights in the sky and craft, he also said that there were military planes following, which anything in our airspace that's unidentified, like there's usually a jet following behind it, because it's like, what the fuck is this thing? And those are very distinct sounds too. And you compare like a jet engine to something like what he described, where it was like a low humming, it's not anything of ours. It can't be anything of ours. And I'll be straight up honest. Current technology right now for jets, they're not quiet by any means. Even the F-35s aren't quiet. So, on top of like, he jumps out the window with his wife levitating over their bed, and her body, like, I guess they're trying to like get the body out of the window. And so he gets out with his gun and starts shooting at the object.
Wait, so she's levitating out of the window.
Mm-hmm.
How the fuck did you get through the window? How big is this window?
It's a pretty big window. It's like one of those like large,
like one of those big bay window things.
I think so. I think that's what it was.
You jumped out the window to try and push your wife back in, I assume.
No, he started shooting at the object in the sky that had his
Why
wife.
not shoot at the thing?
I'm pretty sure he tried to shoot at the
home.
Yeah, pretty sure he tried to shoot the figures in the home first. Which, as soon as like, he starts shooting at the thing, and he's trying to like get his wife. This man's under a lot of stress if you think about it.
It's a fever dream.
But like, eventually his wife gets dropped. Figures completely disappear. And the craft leaves. But that was like one of the things that like really spooked him, was the fact that like his wife just levitating in the middle of the night,
out of the window.
But they also ended up, they may have also been abducted at certain points too, because they would find markings like on their skin, stuff that's been healed, like it had taken some time. And with usual abduction, there's usually some loss of time at some point where nobody remembers like the span of time that they were gone. They don't remember anything that's happened, but they end up with like weird markings that should be fresh if they've never seen it before, right? Because you usually remember like every ding that you get on your body. But in this case, they don't remember anything, that there are lacerations. There's a lot of like questions that they have in their head, or, like, hey, what's going on with this? So, on top of that, and their freaky little visitors, they also mentioned, there might be bigger things out there with red eyes, possibility of a skinwalker on the premises, and these things can withstand bullets, whatever. It's a lot that's happened to these two. And I think what gets really interesting is when there was a scientist that was involved that actually got DNA samples, and he had been in contact with John, and he was like, oh, I'm so excited to like tell you about this. I'm so excited. Well, John doesn't hear anything from this guy, and come to find out that the lab that it was at burned down. The scientist is dead. So, and we all know, just in case, this is all fun and games. This is not, something is up. Something is weird. I'm not going to go into the fact that like Men in Black, like there was mention of Men in Black coming to like ask questions and take stuff, and it's really bizarre. It's really weird. And it's one of the reasons I will never buy a ranch ever, because of weird stuff that you hear from folks that live way out and experience these kinds of phenomena.
Absolutely bonkers.
There was an interview he was doing, and in the video you can see this white gray figure kind of like lean its head over and then come back up. And I'm thinking at the time, I'm pretty sure at the time that he did this interview, he was by himself in the house, and he had no idea until he looked back at the video himself, and he was like, the fuck?
Yeah.
So it's definitely one of those things that makes me think like aliens are definitely kind of probably fucking around with us. But who knows? This also had there was also Ghost Adventures that had visited this ranch. And this is what they were like, it's a demon. They're demons disguised as aliens, or disguising themselves as aliens. And then they mentioned of, a ghost haunting the actual house on the property, stuff like that. But I don't think that's all. I feel like you'd smell sulfur or something if it was demons, but from the way that he described the blood, the way that he described the figures being like 3 feet tall, they were in groups of 3. So there's probably like a little mini army somewhere of 3 foot tall little ETs.
Wait, do we know what they look like? Do they give us like a description of what these like little alien like demon creatures look like, or no?
No, I think as far like stuff that I've seen, and I highly recommend this channel if y'all have never heard of them, but Bedtime Stories has a really good thing, and it's kind of where like visually I see everything, but the way that they had drawn them in their videos was like 3 foot like little black beings with like large moon saucer eyes, like 3 toes on each foot. So it's I think that there might be a case of actual aliens, and if the fact that the previous tenants hired somebody to go and kill like lots of these little things, and the Edmonds weren't aware that the previous tenants have done that. That's still my favorite part, was the fact that they had their own alien hunter on the property.
I would think if somebody comes up to you and is like, hey, guess what? I am the like previous whatever. I'm the previous monster hunter here. I'd be like, what do you mean you're a monster hunter? There's monsters here? Like, I wouldn't just be like, go fuck yourself, or like, we don't need you. I'd be like, what do you mean?
I mean, that would be my question too. I was like, can you elaborate more? But then again, I ask questions I don't want answers to.
But my neighbor is deciding that.
But yeah, that's the gist of Stardust Ranch. And I think they have probably I think their evidence is better than what Skinwalker Ranch has. And then the other few ranches that I mentioned, like Buffalo Ranch, which isn't actually called Buffalo Ranch, but because the person who lives there wants their privacy, and obviously like doesn't want anybody like snooping in, because we all know people get crazy over stuff like this and will like go and be on people's property. Don't do that, especially on stuff on properties like that, because you probably will get shot if they don't know who you are.
It's fine to be an urban explorer. Just make sure you're not on private property first.
Exactly. And then
that's always my like go-to.
But like he, the owner experienced some similar stuff. Maybe not like aliens inside their bedroom making their wife levitate, but the fact that, cows end up mutilated in like the strangest ways. His dogs, he actually lost 3 dogs, and he heard them barking until he heard them not stop barking. And dogs don't just stop barking like that if there's something that they don't know or understand.
Yeah.
So he ended up losing, and I believe his eyewitness accounts, because like I said, he keeps it, everything is private for the most part. Maybe I think from besides his name. just strange happenings like lights in the sky that you don't recognize. And then, and both of these, because I think Buffalo, and then there's another one not too far from him called Clearview, both had similar experiences when it comes down to lights, mutilations, just strange happenings. And I'm not going to lie, this land is haunted. You can't tell me this land's not haunted. So there might be, some truth to like that there might be something out there. Whether it's aliens, whether it's not. I don't think people just go and make up stuff, especially when it comes down to conviction of like their lives might be in danger.
No, I don't think people would lie about stuff like that. I feel like anybody who would lie about that is deeply troubled. If you gotta lie about something like that just to like, make a point, that's definitely not okay, nor is it kosher.
And the scarier things too with the Stardust Ranch stuff is the fact that these beings can just go through walls, doors. Like there's really no locking a door when it comes down to these things, which I think is kind of very scary. And anytime like he has shot or killed one, suppose allegedly, they just poof, vanish. There's no bodies. But like the blood would still be there, which is how he got a sample to a scientist, which later ended up, passing. For whatever reason. We don't know the true scope of it, but I think it's kind of eerie that a scientist is like excited about finding something new and then everything is burned after that.
Burned, like poof?
Poof. Like any sort of, like they couldn't salvage anything from the fire of the lab. I don't like that either. And honestly, like if there is something going on, I'd like to know about it, but our government's not going to tell us everything because that would put everybody into mass hysteria. And they'd go crazy. And we know this.
We saw this during the COVID pandemic. We saw this massively during the COVID pandemic because people, when they're scared, will always act irrationally. Like people don't act rationally when they're scared.
Absolutely.
So if you're looking for like a skinwalker per se, what are some of like the things or traits do you think people should be looking for when they're trying to figure out?
Their eyes are fucky.
Their eyes are fucky.
The closer you hear a voice, from what I've seen, the closer that something sounds to you is actually the further, but the furthest something sounds from you.
Does that apply to skinwalkers?
That apparently applies to skinwalkers. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but
I feel like that just applies to anything at this point because people are like, no, it's a mimic. No, it's a skinwalker. Make up your mind, please and thank you.
It's like Appalachia.
I was just going to say, I'm literally pulling that up right now, the Appalachian Mountains or the Appalachian. I know there's like different ways of pronouncing it. There's all that lore that goes along with that too. Like the big one is you can't whistle in the Appalachian or Appalachian Mountains.
Actually, it's a very common wives' tale, I guess you could say, is that if you're anywhere, especially at night, that you shouldn't whistle.
It brings me right to like the axe killer, the guy who would just like walk up and down, and if
whistling.
Yeah,
no, I don't even remember where I heard this from. I heard it from somebody. I don't know what you just showed me.
I'm just making notes right now because as we're talking, I'm getting more ideas for things that.
Oh, okay. You just fucking flash a picture. I'm like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
I don't even remember where I heard this from. I know I heard this early into me studying my current practices, is that it's very, it's considered an invitation if you're walking around and you're whistling.
What do you mean?
You're expecting something to answer you, like bird calls.
I like that.
Exactly. That's why I don't do it anymore.
I have a friend that he just whistles all the time. Like as he's walking around, he just like walks around very nonchalant. Like I like whistling myself, but like just constantly, always whistling.
Like I know for some people it's just like a random, like it's a stimulation that they do.
Yeah.
And if you're someone, like I notice a lot of stuff. And one of the biggest things, if you see something in the trees, no, you didn't
see it.
Which is really hard. But after staying at Nex's house, it is very easy to ignore things. You don't
My
give it
neighborhood
power.
is so fucking creepy, and I'm amazed Lawrence isn't like this, because if anybody lives on Long Island, New York, you know about Lake Ronkonkoma. You have to. Otherwise, you're living on a rock. Lawrence We're not under a rock, we're on a rock.
That's what I mean. Like, we're literally on a rock.
Well, if you're living under the island, I have several concerns. But the fact that her house isn't nearly as fucking creepy as where my neighborhood is astounding to me.
Do you know the amount of cleansing and, like, clearing and smudging I do in this house?
Even your neighborhood isn't creepy. You're a 5-minute fucking drive, a 15-minute walk. What the hell are you on about?
I can't say the same. We got plenty of haunted places here in Maryland.
No, but
yeah, but you've come here and you've witnessed shit, and you're like, I don't like that.
We just don't give it power.
We talk about Long Island, and flat out, there is nothing on Long Island that, or any part of any town on Long Island that there's not like a known like haunted or like building anywhere.
Or people have had weird experiences in their neighborhoods, in their houses.
Going back to like skinwalkers, because I know skinwalkers and wendigos or wendangos. I'm not perfectly
Wendangos.
Wendango. I mean, that I feel like if we say it that way, it's perfectly safe to say it that way.
Is it?
Wendangos.
Don't ever say that again.
Proper pronunciation. But like I said, I live in an area where there's not a lot of woods, like at all. The closest woods for me is what?
Do you want to switch?
Actually, probably.
I think that's what makes my neighborhood creepier, specifically my house. We were the first house built on this block, and around it was constantly woods. We still have patches of woods that are literally right across from me that's totally fine and untouched.
But I was driving home about a month ago, because I work late. I work until 11. I usually get home at like 11:30-ish if I don't, drive like a Long Islander. And there was a deer just standing in the middle of the road in front of my house. Just standing there. Full on with the big antlers and everything. And I'm like, it's like, granted, yeah, it's not time for them to shed their antlers. They're just standing there. And I'm freaked out because there's no woods on either side. Like, on the one side of my block is a main road. On the other side is just another block. Like, and we're both surrounded by two main roads. Like, we're, like, encompassed by, like, main roads where I live.
Yeah, but deer here will wander anywhere.
But, like, while I am, like, just driving around and stuff, like, you don't expect to see just a random ass deer just in the middle of your block, just standing there. So like I drive up
menacingly,
literally just like staring at me, and like me, I roll up my windows, and then it walks onto my lawn and looks at me like slow turn, looks at me. I'm not gonna get out of my fucking car.
Deer are weird by nature.
There's
honest to fucking God.
Me that deer are not.
Like, I'd still rather deal with a deer than a moose.
Moose are just as weird.
Moose?
Moosies are big.
But until you are staring down a moose,
you shouldn't be staring down a deer either.
I'd rather deal with deer than moose. Like, I will always, it might just be from personal experience of having, to pull my sister behind something, but like, I'd rather deal with deer. At least I know my car can handle a deer if I have to get behind something.
I'd rather deal with neither. That sounds like a good plan. Neither sounds good for me.
I think that's fair. We get a lot of deer here in Maryland, and like I said, I'm usually the one that catches all of them, whereas my fiance doesn't really see them and stuff, but like, you can see them alongside the county roads, and I take a lot of county roads when I drive because, fuck main highways here. Both here and in Virginia. Like, just fuck both highways in general when it comes down to Maryland and Virginia. I mean that disrespectfully.
Yeah, going back to what Lauren was asking about how you could technically spot a skinwalker, people say that their eyes don't change, so they have human eyes, which you've both seen my mother's dog.
And Ayu's just a special case.
But every Great Pyrenees has those kinds of eyes. They have very human-like eyes, and it's concerning.
What scares me is the shoebill stork.
That thing's fucking Skinwalker.
Those always have human-like eyes. They're just very human-looking, and it's very unsettling. I will probably put any
Plaster a picture of a shoebill store.
just right here because those things are creepy looking, very scary, very weird.
Aren't those the ones that they're endangered and they literally can't stand any other of their species?
They also make a machine gun sound.
Yeah.
They make that really creepy sound. I've seen one.
I think the thing with, at least the US, land-wise and stuff, with it being ranchers seeing some really weird stuff, is you could see weird stuff just about demonic. But you could see, you tend to see stuff when you least expect it. And this goes for every part of the US, because there are remote areas of New York. There's even incidents on ranches in New York people have had. There's been weird stuff that's happened in Maryland. There's been weird stuff, a lot of weird stuff happens in Florida. We don't question it. We know it happens. But I think overall, it's just there's a lot of stuff in, when it comes down to, the, North America, the North American continent as a whole. There's a lot of stuff that we don't know. And there's still a lot of remote areas here. And as much as, we'd like to say that we've claimed all this airspace or all this forest, no, just because we can tame some parts doesn't mean we've tamed all of it.
I don't think we should be taming any of it, to be quite honest.
But as humans, we do have this really ridiculous knack of just transforming the environment to fit our needs versus the needs of whatever is around it.
I don't even think it's needs at this point.
No, it's want. It's greed. But the fact that, there's still some sightings and there's still some weird stuff that does happen to people when they're this far out from society. Because again, you're not going to monitor every part of the sky, every part of the land. You can't. Everything is, there's still so much that we have yet to actually see on this continent.
It's even scarier is we know more about space than we do about what's on this planet, which is definitely
the ocean.
terrifying. Yeah, you can't tell me I know this is totally off topic, but mermaids, we could totally think those might exist. I'll always be a true believer in that.
I will still forever be mad at Discovery for being we did this documentary on mermaids and then come out later. Oh yeah, it's a hoax. It's a mockumentary. Well, fuck you, Discovery. You're supposed to be for science.
Discovery's just a joke at this point.
It is. It is. I'd like to think that the world that we currently live on is a lot bigger than what we think it is. And I'm a huge, I say this all the time, the world's a lot smaller. But then again, I run into people that I went to junior high with, so I feel like it's a small world, but in actuality,
that's just because people in this economy can't afford to fucking move.
No, but I'm talking people I met in Alaska live in the similar area that I live in, and it's weird, and it's people I've never even I haven't talked to since junior high. And it's just people migrate to wherever, right? But I'd like to think that maybe there's a lot that we haven't seen in our world that is still very secret, very hidden, and stays hidden because it doesn't want to be found. Which, this goes for anything. If you don't want to be found, you're not going to be found. You manifest that energy.
No, 100%.
Or lack thereof.
We've also proven as a species alone that if we don't understand something or we're scared of it, automatically it's gone.
Get rid of it.
Get rid of it.
We're scared of it. We don't understand it.
Welcome back to the witch trials, everyone.
Yeah. And instead of looking at things with kind of an open mind, everybody just our logic takes a back seat to survival instincts, right? So if something new hits us, we don't look at it as this could potentially benefit us till somewhere years down the line. We're maybe we were wrong about this. People using herbs to medicate themselves is on a list of drugs. And now the benefits of said herbs are why was this banned in the first place? Because, A, control, money, B, It would put Big Pharma out of business. And then see,
Well, you know what? Fuck Big Pharma.
we don't, and then see, we don't understand like how or why this works. So we should be scared of it. And we really need to stop relying on our instincts because,
We're stupid.
That's yeah. Like our instincts are there to save us and protect us from death. But with that comes the balance of maybe we should look at this a little bit more logically.
We don't do that. As humans, we attack first and then ask questions later.
Isn't that like a general rule with like self-defense too? Like when you're protecting yourself is shoot first, ask questions later, but you can't really ask questions later if your full-on intent is to like...
I think it's just an instinct that we've all inherently had as humans, because humans used to be at the bottom of the food chain.
They still kind of are, depending on how stupid you are.
Well, majority rule.
You gotta think, just take, like I always say, just take, what is it called? Labels off of things, like warning labels, and that's fine.
See how many people start popping Tide Pods again.
Oh my god, please. Listen.
Oh my god, please.
The Tide Pod children have grown up.
And I hate that.
They're growing up and they're like doxing like members of Congress. Like they grew up so fast.
I'm like,
listen, this is what happens when you leave children unsupervised and you give them iPads and you stop parenting. I will not retract my statement.
No, I agree with that. Parents need to do better in parenting and stop relying on everybody else around them to monitor what their kids are doing.
Like, you can be a relaxed parent and still parent your child. You're not their friend. And I hate people who are like, oh, well, I'm my kid's best friend. When they are a child, like, as far as I'm concerned, when they're still attending school, like up until high school graduation, they are still a child. They are still your child. You still have to take care of them. Maybe not as much as when they were an infant and they couldn't feed themselves, but you still have to be a parent. You have to discipline them. You have to make sure that they're not doing stupid shit or trying to get themselves killed or arrested.
I mean, back when we were just starting out as a species, I'm sure it was super easy to keep your child from dying. You see that lion over there? Don't go near that lion. Don't touch it.
Cannot pet that dog.
And sometimes kids just need to learn the hard way.
Yeah, but back in the day, that's when natural selection just went, no.
No.
I think we need to bring that back.
No. Too many people would die.
And the planet's overpopulated as it is.
Look, I'm waiting for this alien invasion. I don't know if y'all heard about there's nothing behind it. So let me preface that there's really nothing behind it. Aside from like the JWST, James Webb's Science Telescope that we launched in space, makes great images of space, by the way. But apparently there's an armada of like ships headed this way that changed direction, and like I said, this is all legend. Don't put too much thought behind this.
Yeah, you're gonna make everybody paranoid.
But I'm waiting. If it happens, they need to hurry up. Like, please.
I think they definitely just came here to this planet because of the stuff that we've done. They just went, no thank you, and left.
But also, someone else pointed this out too. And I think this kind of goes into like the whole abduction stuff when it comes down to aliens, is the fact that the 80s and 90s were like kind of the height of like alien stuff. And you don't really see too much of that nowadays. Like every now and then, like you'll have somebody who is like, oh yeah, I saw something like super strange in the sky. I'm not sure what it is, but it was weird, right?
Okay, but people back then were so much more observant to what was going on around them.
That's true too. But somebody pointed out, like, you realize that abductions have like gone down and stuff. And if you think about it, our technology's gotten so much better, and it's like we, like stuff would go off. We're more technologically, like something would go off at this point, right? Our cameras are so much clearer. Our, like, everything is clear. Someone pointed out that maybe, and I'm like, well, maybe they're just trying to cover their asses, because back in the 80s and 90s, you didn't have a phone to just whip out, start filming when you saw something weird. You didn't have, at most as you had eyewitness reports and stuff.
People sketching something out.
Yeah. So, like, at this point, I'm like, it's kind of logical that if, like, there are aliens that are abducting people, that they stop doing that because the chances of them getting caught are way higher now. And if that were to happen, and if there's like some weird conspiracy, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, I promise, but I think they're really fun to dive into.
That's some bullshit. She needs a tinfoil hat.
Shush.
No.
Shush. Shush. But, you know, there might be something between our government, because again, our government doesn't tell us everything. They're not going to tell us everything. And I could dive into other conspiracy theories that involve, you know, stuff that I've heard and seen and jumped into because I was genuinely just curious about this stuff. But if something is like worked out between the government and aliens about how like, hey, you can't be abducting people, you're gonna get caught, and there's not really any way that we can actually stop this, because the internet is forever, and as much as you try to scrub the internet, you cannot scrub everything. And with TikTok, Facebook, social media, it's going to spread like wildfire.
But they're trying a lot harder now to like take things down permanently.
That's true too.
Unless people start using MySpace and Tumblr again actively.
But yeah, they're
like,
working
actively.
harder.
Like the whole populace, like how it used to be, like when we were growing up.
True.
But you know, to be honest, I think there is something. I think there's definitely something, and we're just not being told until like there's actual definitive like evidence that hasn't been edited, hasn't been created. Well, AI is pretty easy to clock nowadays, but like it has to be pretty definitive. And I think the only way that I truly think it was something is if like maybe 100 to 200 people caught the same event, or even on a larger scale, thousands of people. Like the Phoenix lights, for example. Thousands of people saw those. Nobody to this day still knows exactly what they are. Everybody had caught the same exact thing, same exact spots. Like, unless it's stuff like that. We should
title this episode Skinwalkers or Aliens?
We should, because I don't know, that whole thing with like, it's just demons disguising themselves as aliens.
No, we've spoken more about aliens this whole entire hour than actual skinwalkers.
But here's the thing. What is the problem with like skinwalkers? Like, is their whole like purpose in life just to kill other people or kill animals? Like, I think that's something we should really be talking about, like right here. Like, why are skinwalkers bad?
Stories vary. Like, obviously, like what me and Tony said, the original Navajo legend was that it was a witch or a warlock that made some kind of deal, performed some kind of ritual to be able to shapeshift, change, or possess themselves, like, into an animal. And it was mostly just for, like, a power.
And I think it's also just the nature of it, too, is very evil and is filled with a lot of negative connotations. Because, you know, with power corrupts. And, like, it's hard to get into, like, why they would be considered evil, but because they have such an attachment to, like, evil side. And in a way, it's saying, like, don't do this kind of thing. Like, a moral lesson. It's kind of like the legend of
the Wendigos.
The Wendigos, where the biggest thing is, like, don't eat another person. That is taboo. On, like, all levels. You just don't.
I think that's just like a human thing in general. Don't eat people.
No, but the other kind of story that's tied to Wendigos is that if you're too greedy amongst your community, because you got to think back when you were like by yourself in your tribe, that was your family. Not everybody may have been related by blood, but that was your family. You were supposed to take care of each other. You shouldn't be taking more than you need.
Mm-hmm. Essentially, it follows the sin of gluttony.
Mm-hmm. Gluttony, greed.
And a lot of these are very much, when they're legends, I'm not going to say that there's probably not a real connotation behind it or like something that actually happened, but a lot of these stories is a way of just being like, here is the moral. This is what you should not do. This is what is not allowed to do, because if you do this, this means you are evil, or this means you are bad.
But from all that I've heard about skinwalkers, it's basically just because, like, in their legends, normally witches, warlocks, you are already very powerful within your practice, right? So for you to make this ritual or deal or what have you, To gain the ability to shapeshift or possess another living creature.
Mm-hmm.
Made you a little bit more over the top.
You're being greedy.
Mm-hmm.
And normally, that power was not used with good intentions.
People don't use power for their best intentions. Just in personal experiences, people do forget, like, when they have power, what it felt like not to have power. They always say, oh, I'll do good things, but then very rarely does it actually happen.
But that's essentially what the moral of the story is. Like, don't be greedy.
Mm-hmm.
And like any kind of other stories that I've heard involving a skinwalker is mainly just to cause havoc. Which goes back to what Tony was saying, that they're associated with being a trickster. They just want to cause problems, to scare you.
And now the other question is, would they actually kill you?
People have said that they would. I have not heard any stories of a skinwalker actually killing anybody.
That would be my main thing, is like, do they actually kill anybody? Have they actually killed anybody? I would genuinely just like to know, not like I'm being like, oh no, this isn't. I genuinely would like, that would be just.
To remember where I heard this. I think it was on a Ghost Adventures episode, I'm not gonna lie, when they were investigating one of these ranches, and it was just like, is it aliens? Is it demons disguising themselves as aliens? And then there's skinwalkers on the other side of the range.
Skinwalkers, Wendigos.
But apparently there was, I don't think it was on the property, but like up like closer to like what I guess we could call a mountain range, there was supposed to be like a cave that was for like ritualistic use that a skinwalker had performed rituals in, and they had actually brought people like there to kill them, apparently. But nothing was proven. It was just a folklore that was spread.
Well, skinwalkers, they can kill you according to the Navajo mythology, it says here. That they have supernatural abilities like speed, mimicry, and mind control. Skinwalkers can bring terrible pain, illness, and death to oneself or their whole family. Dun-dun.
Yeah, that's not. I haven't heard all of that. I just know the mimicry.
And skinwalkers, okay, this is from supernaturalbeingsfandom.com, so who knows how reliable this is. Skinwalkers can reproduce.
With other skinwalkers or with people?
With people.
Lovely.
And their children are always going to be skinwalkers. But they're going to be undistinguishably...
Dominic Jean.
Oh, yeah. Resulting in children that are always skinwalkers. They will be undistinguishable, I can't English today, from normal humans until puberty, where they will start being able to gain the ability to shapeshift and enhance their physical characteristics. They can shapeshift whenever, so they're not like werewolves. They don't need a full moon.
Back on topic. I don't feel bad for calling some children that I see on the internet doing shady shit skinwalkers.
Skinwalker.
Because now maybe they are.
A kid that like disappeared for like 3 days. Yeah. And then like he came back, and like the picture they have of him, his eyes are like...
That kid was fucking horrified.
That kid saw some shit.
I wonder how that kid's doing.
I don't know. But that was a whole people thought he got abducted by aliens.
Look, as much as I love the whole alien theory, I don't think everything involves aliens. I really don't.
You think a skinwalker took him?
Whatever is in the forest did something, and I can't say for certain.
That?
He had a
Wasn't it
different outfit on though too when he
Yeah.
came back.
Yeah. No, he was dressed completely different, but it was still filthy, so it's like the people who found him didn't change him. Also, he was found in a tool shed that I'm pretty sure was locked.
And
Yeah,
was
chances are
5-10 miles away from where he was lost.
No, I think
during
it was
a
further.
storm.
I think
it was further, and it was during a storm.
I think we have another topic for another time.
Just talk about Riker's disappearance.
But just with a lot of these ranchers, I kind of will take what they say into like I'll believe a rancher. They don't have any reason to make shit up on their property, especially if a lot of them just want nice, quiet lives and they can't get that because of bullshit.
Goddamn skinwalkers.
goddamn skinwalkers, Wendy no-nos, the fucking
Wendy
aliens.
Wendy no-nos. Well, apparently you're not supposed to say it. I don't think that counts because we're all white as fuck.
Wendy no-nos.
But Tony won't say it because
I try to be as respectful as I can,
It would be
because
nice to get educated more on this topic as well.
that's
from
the
somebody
thing,
who
like,
is Navajo. That would be amazing.
oh, that's the thing though too, is it's also very closed.
yeah,
Very closed, and with a lot of their beliefs, words spoken hold a lot of power.
that's why
Which
they
is-
don't say.
Mm-hmm. It's like,
They
remember
don't
how I
say
said,
them
like,
by name.
don't give it power, and that's essentially what they do by not saying it, is they're not giving it any power.
We had a girl who was, I don't even know where, but she was of Native American descent, and we would talk about creepy things like this. But she found me the funniest loophole. She started calling them Wendy's employees.
I love that.
And there's stickers now. There are stickers. It got out. People have started calling them this, and it's the funniest thing, and I want to find it now. But there is, like, a picture of Wendigo with, like, the Wendy's background, or it's, like, Wendy as one, and it's funny. You've seen it. It's, like, the best thing I've ever heard, and I was just like, that's great.
I love this. I love that. But I think I have another topic too about, like, our own, like, North American wilderness that I think would be a good topic, and it's like the missing 411 people that just vanished without a trace.
Oh, yes.
And if anybody, I have lived and I have seen the North American, on the northwest side. I've seen all that. You realize how remote that is, and people go missing in those areas a lot.
We should go visit.
Why, are you trying to get rid of me?
No, I want to just leave. Vanish.
No, because what if Bigfoot gets you?
Not scary. Bigfoot does not murder people. Bigfoot is a kind little soul.
I don't know.
He's not little.
We were driving to Alaska when we were moving. We saw a Bigfoot crossing sign in Canada.
Did you just say when we were driving to Alaska?
My parents drove us from Utah to Alaska.
Oof!
I
was gonna say, were you close at least? Nope.
So
You
we had
did
made a pit stop in
close.
California. We made a pit stop in California because we were taking care of my grandma. My grandma got sick and stuff, but then we had to, like, leave. And so we drove from California up to Alaska. Essentially, though, we drove the entire fucking way from Utah to Alaska. We just had a stop in California because that's where my grandmother lived, and we needed to be on the East Coast, on the other side of the Sierra Nevada mountains. We also had 2 cats and a dog. So
All crammed in the car.
this time my dad hit a pothole, and then, like, the entire truck, because we were in an expedition, the entire truck, like, caught air, and we were on, like, a mountain pass.
Christ.
Thank you.
Can I go back to 2005?
No.
But yeah, there was a Bigfoot crossing sign in Canada, like, right along the highway. And my mom's first is like, "Oh, Jerry, I want to see Bigfoot now." And my dad's like, "You just expect to summon him? This isn't a deer crossing sign where apparently deer like to congregate next to." And if anybody understands that reference.
The road. Hell.
Oh.
I think we should end it now.
Right, guys. So, Skinwalker, aliens, are Skinwalkers a thing? Are they not a thing?
Is it?
Aliens. Dun dun dun.
Bye.
Alrighty, guys. So until next time, stay spooky.
This is your local conspiracy theorist, T. Y'all have a great day. Whatever you're doing.
Remember, don't whistle at night. And if you hear a voice by yourself, don't answer it. Alright, guys. Until next time.